The text from my mom arrived at 11:43 p.m. Screen lit up the dark room. We changed every lock. You're homeless now. Let's see how tough you really are. I stared at it. Words didn't feel real. My finger hovered over the screen like it might bite me. Read it once, twice, 3 times, until each word burned itself into my mind like a brand. Expected tears, maybe rage, maybe panic. What came instead was something quieter, colder, clarity. I didn't text back, didn't call, didn't fall apart. I smiled, because the truth none of them understood was that home wasn't a building, wasn't theirs to steal, and what happened next would tear apart the comfortable kingdom they'd built on lies, greed, and my silence. I don't regret a single second. If you've ever been used, drained, and thrown away by your own family, the people who should have protected you, then you already taste this kind of betrayal. Hit that subscribe button. Because this story isn't revenge for revenge's sake. It's justice delivered with receipts and lawyers. It's what happens when family greed meets legal strategy and loses. Asterisk, asterisk. Setup. Asterisk, asterisk. My name is Olivia Park. I'm 27. A detail-obsessed spreadsheet person with a memory for numbers, which turned out to be both my curse and my weapon. I grew up in a neat craftsman house in Seattle, Washington. Gray trim on the windows, cherry tree that bloomed pink every spring. From the outside, anyone would have called us picture perfect. Inside those walls, perfection was a show. And I was the crew keeping the set running. The exploitation started small. Or what passes for small when you're too young to recognize patterns. I was 13 when my dad started giving commands, instead of asking. Olivia, grab the tools. We're fixing the deck. Olivia, hold this level. Don't move. Weekends vanished into splinters and sweat. While other girls tried nail polish and sleepovers, I was painting, siding, and hauling lumber. My hands were covered in calluses from gripping tools too big for my size. My shoulders ached constantly, but every complaint got the same rehearsed answer. You're stronger than any son I could have had, Dad would say with a grin. Messed up my hair like that erased the pain. Mom would smile in agreement. Family takes care of family. You're so capable, Olivia. Chloe's more delicate. Delicate. Family code for favorite. Chloe, my younger sister, was always the orchid in sunlight. I was the root buried in dirt, keeping the flower alive. I believed their stories, that hard work built character, that this was love disguised as tough parenting. By 16, I was so programmed that saying no felt like being cruel. Then the money requests started. Subtle at first. Things are tight, Mom would sigh. Could you help with the water bill? Said it like she was asking me to pass the pepper. Later came mortgage help. Unexpected expenses. Gentle manipulations that made me feel proud to solve problems that weren't mine. By 20, I realized my parents hadn't just accepted my help. They expected it. I was the invisible ATM funding their illusion of stability, while they quietly saved every spare dollar for Chloe's future. When I asked about small treats or breaks, I was told those aren't priorities right now. Meanwhile, Chloe got a brand new Jeep at 17. Full tuition paid to a private university. All expenses trip to France to study fashion. I worked 13-hour days, balancing client accounts while eating dollar store ramen at my desk. But love disguises itself as logic when you've been trained to accept scraps. I told myself it was fair because I was the strong one. The responsible daughter. Being dependable made me feel valuable. Asterisk, asterisk. The discovery. Asterisk, asterisk. Then about 10 months ago, that illusion shattered. I noticed small things first. Whispers that stopped when I walked in. Family planning. Conversations where my name never appeared. My gut screamed something was wrong. But I couldn't prove it. Until that night in February. Came home late from my accounting firm. Shoulders heavy from audit season exhaustion. Heard voices in the dining room. Almost walked past. Then I caught my name. So I froze and listened. The title is in our names only, Mom said quietly. Olivia doesn't know all her contributions were just gifts. She gets nothing when we sell. Dad laughed, deep and ugly. Didn't sound like the man I'd once trusted. She never asked for contracts. Classic Olivia. All emotion, zero business brain. Then Chloe's voice, hesitant but curious. But won't she think she deserves something? Mom snorted. Deserve what? She gave gifts. Gifts don't buy equity. I gripped the doorframe until my fingers went numb. They were planning to sell the house, the one I'd painted, maintained, financed, cut me out completely. My own family plotting like criminals dividing stolen cash. I didn't cry, didn't storm in, didn't confront them. Instead, I walked to my room, opened my laptop, and began quietly building the case that would destroy them. Asterisk, asterisk, building the case. Asterisk, asterisk. For the next 7 months, I lived 2 lives. By day, mild-mannered accountant. By night, evidence collector. Every receipt, every email, every bank transfer. They all became pieces in a legal puzzle. Dad's arrogance was my secret weapon. He never kept clean records. He'd Venmo me quick transfers with vague notes like help or temporary loan. I cataloged everything. $52,000 in mortgage contributions, $26,000 in renovation materials, $18,000 in utilities I'd covered when they claimed financial crisis, $96,000 total, all neatly traced back to me. Add to that 12 years of unpaid labor, painting walls, replacing roof tiles, installing plumbing. Work any contractor would have charged $50,000 for. I built spreadsheets so detailed the IRS would have been impressed. Once my evidence mountain was complete, I met quietly with 4 different lawyers to confirm what my instincts already knew. Legally, I had a case. A strong one. My name might not be on the deed. But equity isn't always written in ink. It's written in proof. Sweat, blood, bank statements. So I waited. Asterisk, asterisk, the trigger, asterisk, asterisk. When the text arrived that night in October, we changed every lock. You're homeless now. Let's see how tough you really are. It didn't break me. It completed the picture. That laughing emoji at the end was the final nail in their story of cruelty. It proved intent, made their motives crystal clear. They thought they were locking me out. What they'd actually done was hand me the last piece of evidence I needed to burn their comfortable world to the ground. Legally, I slept better that night than I had in months. Asterisk, asterisk. Filing the lawsuit. Asterisk, asterisk. At 7 sharp the next morning, I walked into my office with coffee in one hand and phone in the other. My attorney answered on the first ring. Olivia, morning. I smiled. Eyes on the sunrise, cutting through the window blinds. File it, I said. Voice steady despite adrenaline screaming through my veins. He didn't need clarification. We'd been preparing for this moment for months. 3 days later, my parents' lawyer called. What I can only describe as panicked. Miss Park, we have a major issue here. We need to talk immediately. Of course they had an issue. Their cage of control had cracks, and I'd just blown them wide open. But I didn't call back right away. I wanted them to sweat. Wanted them to realize the daughter they'd been using and dismissing had grown into a woman who understood exactly how power worked. Asterisk, asterisk. The confrontation. Asterisk, asterisk. The showdown came the following week. Sterile mediation room downtown. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, casting everything in harsh, unforgiving brightness. Long conference table dominated the space. My legal team on one side, theirs on the other. They walked in first. My father red-faced and blustering. My mother trying to keep her usual air of superiority. Chloe looking confused and slightly terrified. First time in months I was in the same room with all 3 of them. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no leftover love, just cold professional focus. I didn't make eye contact. Instead, I placed a thick folder on the table, slid it toward the center. "What's this?" Dad demanded, voice carrying that familiar dismissive authority. My attorney opened the folder. With deliberate precision, documentation of my client's financial contributions to the property, as well as evidence of labor and materials provided over a 13-year period. Inside were copies of every bank statement, every receipt, every financial record I'd meticulously gathered, bank transfers totaling $52,000 toward mortgage, receipts for $26,000 in renovations and repairs, utility payments during their supposed financial emergencies, contractor invoices for work I'd funded when they claimed they couldn't afford necessary fixes. But the most damning evidence? A series of texts and emails where they'd explicitly requested my financial help, promising it was temporary, that they'd make it up once things improved. Dad flipped through pages, his confident smirk collapsing with each turn. Mom tried interrupting several times, but her voice kept catching as the scope of documentation became clear. Chloe just sat there, eyes darting between the papers and her parents' faces, finally realizing she wasn't the beloved daughter in a happy family. She was a beneficiary in a calculated scheme to exploit her sister. "This is ridiculous," Dad finally sputtered. "Those were gifts. Family helping family. Olivia never asked for any formal arrangement." My attorney's response was calm and surgical. "Mr. Park, these documents show a pattern of solicited contributions made under the representation that they were temporary assistance during financial hardship. My client has evidence you and your wife deliberately concealed your true financial situation while accepting these payments." He pulled out another set of documents. Bank statements I'd subpoenaed showing my parents' actual financial position during periods when they'd claimed to need my help. They'd had substantial savings and investment accounts the entire time. "Furthermore," my attorney continued, "the text message your wife sent explicitly threatening to make my client homeless demonstrates malicious intent to deprive her of the benefits of her contributions." The silence in that room was suffocating. I watched my parents' faces as reality sank in. That house, their fortress, their kingdom, their weapon against me, was slipping from their control. Mom tried speaking first, voice shaky and desperate. "Olivia, sweetheart, this is all a misunderstanding. You never meant for me to document everything," I interrupted, speaking directly to her for the first time since entering the room. "You never meant for me to understand property law. You never meant for me to realize I'd been subsidizing your lifestyle for years while you saved your own money for Chloe's future." Dad's face turned an alarming shade of red. "After everything we did for you, after raising you, housing you, feeding you, after using me as unpaid labor for 13 years, I cut him off. After taking $96,000 from me under false pretenses, after planning to sell the house I helped build and maintain without giving me a cent." My attorney laid out our demands with surgical precision. My client isn't seeking repayment. She's seeking her rightful ownership stake in the property based on those contributions. Given the documented evidence of financial investment and labor, we're requesting a 45% ownership interest. The room exploded. Dad started shouting about ungrateful children and legal extortion. Mom burst into tears, wailing about family loyalty and how I was destroying everything. Chloe just sat there in shocked silence, probably calculating how much her inheritance had just shrunk. But I remained calm, focused. I'd spent months preparing for this moment. Their emotional manipulation couldn't touch me anymore. Asterisk, asterisk, the victory, asterisk, asterisk. When the judge signed the court order 8 weeks later, I stood outside the courthouse holding official documents that gave me legal ownership of 45% of the property, not because my family had generously decided to include me, because the law recognized what they tried to deny. I'd earned my stake in that house through years of financial contributions and labor. The first thing I did wasn't move back in. That place was poisoned by too many memories, too many years of manipulation and exploitation. Besides, they'd changed the locks, Remember? They'd made it clear I wasn't welcome there. Instead, I forced the sale of the property. As a 45% owner, I had the legal right to demand liquidation if we couldn't reach agreement about the property's use. And since my parents had made abundantly clear they didn't want to live with me, and I had zero desire to live with them, sale was the only logical option. Asterisk, asterisk. The aftermath. Asterisk, asterisk. The house sold for $740,000. Significantly more than they'd probably expected. Thanks to all the improvements I'd funded over the years, my share came to $333,000, minus legal fees and taxes. But here's the beautiful part. My parents had been counting on that house sale to fund their retirement. They'd planned to pocket the entire $740,000, use some to buy a smaller place, invest the rest for their golden years. Instead, they walked away with $407,000 before their own legal fees and taxes, barely enough to buy a modest condo in a less desirable area. Their dreams of a comfortable, wealthy retirement evaporated overnight. With my share of proceeds, I bought a beautiful loft in a trendy neighborhood downtown. It's smaller than the family house, but it's completely mine. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every improvement, my choice, my responsibility. They still try contacting me sometimes. Dad sends emails full of guilt trips. After everything we sacrificed, this is how you repay us. Mom leaves voicemails dripping with fake regret. Family is supposed to forgive, Olivia. You'll regret this when we're gone. Chloe has tried playing mediator, suggesting family therapy, claiming she never knew about their plans to exclude me. But she was sitting at that dining table discussing how to cut me out. She knew exactly what was happening. I don't respond to any of them. Blocked their numbers, filtered their emails, moved on with my life. Because the truth is, when they changed those locks and sent me that cruel text, they thought they were taking my security and my future. What they actually did was hand me the evidence I needed to claim what was rightfully mine. They wanted to make me homeless. Instead, they lost their own home and their retirement security. Asterisk, asterisk. Closing. Asterisk, asterisk. And now, when I sit in my living room sipping coffee in the peaceful silence of my own space, I smile. I smile because the locks they changed don't matter. I have my own locks now. I smile because the house they tried to keep is sold, and nearly half the money is mine. I smile because that text meant to break me became the final proof of their betrayal. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who think they know you best. They assume you'll always be the person they've conditioned you to be. Compliant, giving, easy to control. But people grow. People learn. And sometimes people fight back. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up to toxic family. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to take legal action against family who tried to use you? What was your breaking point? Your stories help others realize they're not alone in these situations.